All right, ladies. So historically, being selling something in a school is something that's very frowned upon. But now you guys are teaching, I think, kids to students to sell in school. So how do you get that through the the principals, the superintendents, the other teachers to be like, hey, like this is what we're teaching. This is acceptable. How do you get through that, Ashley?
So, we actually none of our student businesses have started selling product at the school. As far as like what the girls and Evan were saying with like the cakes and the slushies. And I just want to kind of clarify a little bit with what TT and Mayana were talking about. So, the class that I teach first for the kids is called Incubator. And so they're in groups, they're coming up with business ideas, they're testing it, with customers, they're doing a lot of surveys, they're trying to figure out, is this a viable idea? Could I make money off of this? We end that class with a big pitch night where we give away about $25,000 to the top team, split amongst the top teams that we feel like could actually bring that business to life. Those teams that get funded get to move on to the next class, which is called Accelerator, where they're actually using the money that they were given to start their business. So if a team does not get funded on pitch night, they have the option of raising the money themselves. And so when Ms. Timlin said earlier that selling the slushy thing, that's not typically what we recommend. We want them to go out and find investors that believe in their business idea and want to be a part of that. But TT and Mayana were so driven and they wanted their business to work and were willing to put in the effort to do it. So they decided to sell their slushies to raise money to get into the next level class. So like I said, we haven't had kids selling like food items and stuff at the school because we're really not, like you said, we're not really allowed to be doing things like that.
Allowed. So it's interesting there. So oftentimes in business, the plan doesn't happen the way that you want to. It sounds like that's not the way that Tiana and Mayana wanted to happen, right? They wanted to go to pitch night, make the 25K or a portion of the 25K, but it didn't happen. And so instead of just throwing in the towel and calling it a quit, they figured out a way to get back on the field and make something happen. And so is that just something, that grit, that resiliency is instilled in you two, or like how does that come out? Because I think a lot of people would literally take the towel and throw it in and be like, I'm done.
And based on the judges' feedback that they got that night, the fact that they kept going is so impressive.
Well, here's my feedback. Don't ever listen to a judge who's not your customer. So
yeah. It is. It's just something that's kind of instilled in us. Like we I don't want to say taught, but it was just a part of my life to never really give up. Like if you're thrown a curveball, you just kind of go around it. So we could admit that at the time it was called Teens for Teens and it really didn't make sense. Well, the night we got the news that we didn't make it, we were hurt and we felt like it made sense. But the longer we sat down and talked about it, we were like,
more emotional when you found out that you weren't going to walk across the stage of graduation, or when you got the bad feedback? Because you seem to be an emotional person. I'm
I am a very emotional person, and oh wow, that's a hard question. I would say when I found out that we weren't having prom and graduation, because I knew that if we didn't get funded at pitch night, like we said, we could bootstrap the money or raise the money somehow to move on. But if I didn't go to prom, I was never going to prom. I think I was more emotional finding out that I was class of COVID 2020 than I was about not getting funded.
Yeah, I'm completely opposite. I'm more of a competitive person.
Yes,
so when I lost, it felt like I wasn't gonna graduate. It felt like my life was over. So the judges, they struck me and it made me kind of want to persevere and prove them wrong. And then we got the opportunity to meet Bruce again, and he helped, and we presented to Pharrell, which was an opportunity that was just amazing because we kind of persevered, showed him he was happy for us that, hey, I remember you guys.
You guys didn't make sense back then.
And now,
Pharrell said that?
No.
Bruce
Thompson.
He was the,
Bruce Thompson is our large donor who donates $25,000 towards our pitch night. He's a large hotelier in this area. So they actually, Bruce comes here and does work with the students here at the school, and they have to pitch what they've done basically with his money that he donated. And Miss Houchins made E.T. and Mayana pitch to him, and they were like, I don't want to pitch back to him. Like, he didn't give us any money. Like, we pitched to him, and she made them do that, and it was right on the cusp of something in the water happening 2 years ago, and he heard them pitch and their idea. And I will say, I think that's a word that hasn't been used around them, is the passion. Like, they really just have a passion for what they're doing, and I think that has made a real difference for them, and they showed that passion, and he felt like this is something Pharrell needs to hear. And he basically made that happen, where they had a private pitch at the Cavalier with Pharrell. Share their idea.
Yeah, we pitched a lot. That was probably the most nervous I have ever been to do a pitch since I was a freshman in high school. That was so nerve-wracking, but once we got it done, it was great.
yes.
Yeah.
How long of a pitch was it to Pharrell?
Yeah, maybe I don't want to say 10 minutes, like 8 maybe. It wasn't long.
Q&A after.
Yeah. So like we pitched for like maybe 3 or 5 minutes, and then they had questions and stuff like that.
Yes.
Very cool. Well, I'll give you all a plug to an event called Start Peninsula. And if you're not familiar with it, take a look. Startpeninsula.com is the website, and that is a pitch competition. Next one, actually, the next one is next Tuesday on the 22nd of September. Applications are open for that, and then there's another one on October 13th, and those are 2 events where the top pitchers will then advance to a final event in November, and top 3 winners will each receive $5,000 in seed funding. But that would be a great opportunity for anybody with an area code, and we've really been looking for ways to bring in high schoolers, because we really see the need to teach this and bring on younger folks. So take a look and look to see if you can incorporate that into your program.
Okay. We most definitely will.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, and that sounds like a good opportunity for our accelerator students, where Evan currently is. Because based on how, COVID in the year ended, we were not able to have our annual pitch night. We were not able to give out $25,000. It didn't feel like a time where we could ask a donor who also was trying to open a hotel at the oceanfront to ask him for money to do a virtual pitch. And we didn't really know what the landscape was going to look like. So, I think that's a good opportunity for our current students, Ms. Houchins.
Okay, so you said something I think is interesting. So you just said, due to COVID, we didn't know what the landscape was, right? So let's remove COVID from that sentence and say, we don't know what the landscape is. Like, it seems like you never really know what the landscape is anyway, right? And so how do you kind of forecast what that could look like so that these students can be as successful as possible? Because, COVID or not, I think you could remove that from a lot of what we're hearing in the last 6-7 months or so. And if you were just to remove COVID, it might not have been that much of a different of a year from some of the headlines that you would have seen. Restaurant closed, business closed, right? Oh, it's due to COVID, right? And I think we all will probably agree to that. But those things happen anyway. So you can't kind of forecast, or how do you forecast the future when you don't really know what's going to happen anyway?
Yeah, I think that it was at the time of where we were, we hadn't seen it done, and we didn't have any background as to what that was going to look like. I think now we know what we can do. We actually did have the students last year pitch to our board of advisors at the end of the year. So we did do a virtual pitch where they created a video
of their business. And then we did have the investors or the advisors pick a certain number of teams who they felt like had potential to then move on this year. And hence that's how we made up Ashley's class. We just didn't give the students money at the time. And right now, Ashley has worked really hard and is working really hard to get the students now in a place where they do a video pitch for funding donor so that we are able to have them move these business ideas forward. So I think at the time we didn't understand the landscape. It hadn't been done yet. We've now seen it done and we now understand it a little bit more to be able to do it. I think everyone was in a bit of a crisis as we were shutting down school. We were worried about our seniors. I'm not gonna lie, PT and Mayana, we all shed a lot of tears over not being able to graduate that first class the way we thought we were going to. And a lot of the focus, how do we graduate kids? How do we finish the school year? We were very much in an emergency mode, where now we are very much in a mode of like, how are we making our program work despite what everything looks like?
Yeah, I mean, those emotions we know are real because they're emotional. She's emotional. Hey, I'm just, yes, I'm picking on you. I apologize. However, you started it, and I think it's adding a little bit of flair. Evan,